Hi everybody, my name's Chloe and I'm the Naturehood Oxford Community Engagement Officer. I'd like to talk to you guys today a little bit about insects and the creatures that eat them, but what we're going to do is we're going to wait a couple of minutes just to see how many people join to give people a chance to get to the feed. So if you haven't really heard of Naturehood before, what we do is we'd like to encourage people to do things for wildlife in their gardens. So I'll show you around a little bit later. I have a tiny little patio garden. I live in rented accommodation with 3 other people, and that means that basically we don't have a very big space to do that much in. But I'm going to talk to you a bit about insects, about the animals that eat them, and I'm going to talk to you about what you can do in a small space. When you think of your own garden, think of it not just as a tiny space with nothing else around it. There's lots of other gardens that are also tiny spaces, and when we link them all together, we actually provide a lot of habitat for wildlife. So if you haven't been to our website before, it's www.my.naturehood.uk. We've got a new platform which we launched a couple of months ago now, which replaced the old one, and it's fantastic. We've got a live feed where you can talk to each other, where you can post photos about what you're doing in your garden, ask questions if you've got problems with identification of an animal. Claire, who's our research manager, is fantastic at identifying lots of different creepy crawlies and stuff like that. So yeah, she is fantastic if you need help with any of that. We also have local groups. So if you, for example, live in Oxford, there's a local group for Oxford. We've got some for Wiltshire. We've got others that are going kind of around the country, and you can also set up your own local group if you and some of your neighbours, people in your community, are really kind of driven by wildlife, and that's what you want to do. We'd love to have you on board with Naturehood, spreading the message about changing stuff in your gardens for wildlife, about these small little actions that can really, really help to make a difference. Okay, I can see we've got a couple of people joining now. That's fab. We've got one of my friends from up in Marston, one of my areas that I did a lot in last year. So thank you very much for joining. I know that a couple of people from Bloxham are hopefully going to be joining in a mo. So I'd like to wait a second for those. That's fab. Yeah. So if you've only just joined us today, we're going to be focusing on insects, but not just insects themselves, but the food that they provide for other animals. So maybe we should start. This is my first Facebook Live, so I may be a little bit nervous, but I'm hoping that doesn't really show. Okay, right, let's get started. So, insects. We have a lot of insects in the UK. There's unbelievable amounts of them worldwide, but they are in decline, and that's a real shame. They really are the backbone of kind of the food webs that kind of, that support all of the species that we have. And without insects, lots of our creatures really would struggle to survive. I don't know if you guys have live in a place where swifts fly over in the summer, but I know here we've had them all summer. It's been fantastic to listen to them screeching in the air. But they will eat insects, and they will eat them on the wing. So they basically fly all of the time unless they're nesting. And years and years and years ago, people used to think that they were actually legless birds, because their legs are really small, they tuck them up and you can't really see them, and because they just spent all of their time flying around. So insects that fly are really, really important to swifts, and especially when they've got young in their nest and they're collecting those insects to take back to feed their young. The same with creatures like blue tits and great tits. They will collect caterpillars that time themselves with the bursting of oak leaves in the spring. And these caterpillars are really useful for that kind of protein, for developing the skeletons of those young chicks. And actually, in years where there's been, say, some kind of slightly almost an early spring and then a frost again, and the caterpillars haven't done very well, that has directly affected the kind of success of those chicks fledging. So again, those insects are really important. We have 18 species of bat in the UK. We have 17 species that we know are breeding, and one single bat of one species, which is hiding in Salisbury somewhere, I think it is. Wiltshire, maybe. Anyway, of those 17 species, 18 of them, all of them eat insects. All of our bats are insectivorous. So there are bats across the world in places like Australia that eat fruit, those massive ones that look a bit like foxes. But all of the ones in the UK eat insects. So it's really important that we are providing habitat for insects in our garden to support those bat species, especially as a lot of our bat species, again, are in decline. And some of that is due to habitat changing, it's due to people changing the use of buildings, and also due to us intensifying agriculture. So if you think a long time back when we used to hand cut fields with a scythe and things like that, we had lots more hedgerows, we didn't use pesticides. When people started getting, big combine harvesters and things like that, suddenly our fields became massive, humongous, and people started spraying crops with pesticides because, we all need food to eat and you want your crops to be as successful as possible. It makes perfect sense. However, that obviously has a very negative effect on the insects that will be living in your fields. And bats can actually provide an ecosystem service. They can eat the insects that are flying around those fields and predating on the crops. And I can't actually remember the value at the moment, but in other countries, some bats do kind of present they do so much for the agriculture that they save people quite a lot of money. Other insects, right. So if you think of frogs breeding in your pond, they don't spend all of their time in the pond. Sometimes they can be, living in log piles, places like that, and there they'll forage for insects as well. So really important to be creating log piles and leaf piles so that we can boost the foraging for our amphibians. Now what I'd like to do is just take you on a little walk around my garden. So I'm going to switch the focus here. So we have a tiny little patio garden, but we have quite a lot growing. My housemate has got lots of herbs and things like that growing over here. We've got cucumbers and courgettes. I have got 5 rather unruly tomato plants, which occasionally have bugs on them, but I haven't used any pesticides or anything like that. We're just feeding them with water and Tomarite and hoping that is all okay. And then we've got lots of we have basically one border that runs along the edge of our garden, and we try and cram as much in there as possible. So we've recently got some climbers, which we're training up. We've got a camellia going up there, we've got our massively tall sunflower, and we've got things like lavender, which are really important for insects. We actually see quite a lot of sorry, my battery's going low, that's not great. We see quite a lot of insects in our garden, lots of butterflies and lots of bees. And actually I want to take you down into what is called Shade Corner, but actually this is the area where I found that we have shrews. So shrews are insectivores, they purely eat insects, and they hide along the fence line where our potatoes are. So we have a little potato crop just there, which is fab. And then we have over here, we've got raspberries growing. And it's really great, the cover that affords our smaller mammals like the insectivores, like that shrew, really useful for them to hide as well. We do feed the birds. We don't feed them that often because we actually have 2 gardens either side of us that feed quite a lot. But we have some grain in there which they come down and feed. We mostly get blue tits, but I have seen a coal tit recently as well. And most importantly, we do have our hedgehog hole down here, which is where not only little creatures like hedgehogs, but shrews, mice, the cat who belongs to next door can get through. And we have an open compost heap, which looks very scruffy, but actually really fantastic for insects. I went digging around in there a while ago and we have so many woodlice you would not believe. It is fab. So that's kind of what you can do in your tiny patio garden. Let me just switch ourselves around again. I don't want you guys to feel discouraged about the fact that, you can have a tiny space and you don't know what to do. You can really do an impressive amount in a small space. So I hope you've all enjoyed that. Just thinking about the website again, if you haven't visited before, it is www.my.naturehood.uk, and it would be fantastic if we could see some more people going on there and sharing what they're doing for wildlife. Okay, back to me now. I'm going to go back to my little spot over here. We've got a survey called the Nature Space Challenge, which is on the website, on the platform, and we'd really love people to fill that in. So if you sign up to the platform, it's all completely free. You can do the Nature Space Challenge. We've got an indoor survey and an outdoor one, and you could submit that, and that will tell us how the wildlife is doing in your garden. We'll have a new version of it for autumn, and then another version of it for spring, and then we'll be back onto this one for next summer. And it's so we can track what you guys are doing over time, and we can look at the difference and report those findings back to you guys through newsletters and things like that, so that you can see exactly what impact what you're doing for wildlife is having in your garden. It's been lovely to talk to you all, and thank you for watching. Please do head to the website, and if you'd like to post about us on any social media, please use the hashtag Naturehood and tag the Naturehood page as well. Thank you very much.